It was a cold night when the call came in. No screams. No witnesses. Just silence. At exactly 2:14 a.m., a patrol officer found a car parked on the side of a deserted highway. The engine was still warm. The headlights were on, but the driver's seat was empty. What police would later discover inside that car would lead them into one of the most disturbing psychological crime cases they had ever investigated. This is not a story about monsters hiding in the dark. This is a story about ordinary people and the terrifying choices they made. The victim was 26 years old. By all accounts, he lived a normal life. He worked a steady job. He paid his rent on time. He spoke to his family every weekend. No criminal record, no known enemies. On the day he disappeared, nothing seemed unusual. Security cameras showed him leaving work at 6:42 p.m. He stopped at a grocery store. He bought a frozen meal and a bottle of water. At 7:18 p.m., his phone connected to a cell tower near the highway. That was the last signal ever received from his device. After that, nothing. At first, police assumed it was a simple missing person case. Maybe a breakdown. Maybe a voluntary disappearance. Maybe an accident in the woods nearby. But then, the forensic team searched the car. There were no signs of a struggle. No blood. No damage. Except for one detail that made investigators pause. The passenger seat was pushed all the way back, as if someone very tall had been sitting there. Someone the victim knew well enough to let inside the car. The case went cold for 3 weeks. No ransom demands. No suspicious transactions. No activity on the victim's bank account. Until a strange package arrived at the local police station. There was no return address. Inside the box was a cheap burner phone and a handwritten note with only 6 words. "You already met the killer." The phone was charged. When investigators powered it on, there was only one audio file saved. They played it in a sealed evidence room. What they heard changed everything. The voice was calm, measured, almost polite. It said, "People think violence is loud. It is. Real damage happens quietly. By the time you realize what's wrong, it's already over." Then the recording ended. Detectives went back to the beginning. They re-examined every interaction from the victim's final day. That's when they noticed something they had missed before. At 6:55 p.m., just after leaving work, the victim received a phone call. It lasted exactly 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The number was unregistered, but the cell tower location matched someone else. A coworker. Someone who had clocked out just minutes earlier. The coworker's name had appeared in the file before, but there was nothing suspicious about him. He was quiet, kept to himself. No criminal history. No disciplinary actions. When police brought him in for questioning, he didn't panic. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't deny knowing the victim. He simply said something unsettling. "I was wondering when you'd come." During the interview, the coworker explained everything calmly. He said the victim had been talking to him for months, sharing personal problems, complaining about feeling trapped, about wanting everything to stop. According to him, that night wasn't an abduction. It was an agreement. Detectives didn't believe him until they checked the victim's private messages. Hidden deep in archived conversations were long late-night chats. Messages about fear, about exhaustion, about disappearing without hurting anyone. And one sentence repeated again and again. "Promise you won't tell anyone." The coworker claimed he was only there to listen. He said they parked on the highway to talk, to think, to breathe. Then he stopped speaking. In the interview room, there was a full 10 seconds of silence. Finally, he said, "He asked me to leave the car." What happened next was never recorded. No cameras. No witnesses. No physical evidence. Only the coworker's words. He said the victim walked into the darkness by his own choice. That he didn't follow. That he never saw him again. But police weren't convinced. Because something didn't add up. Search teams combed the area for weeks. And eventually, they found something. Not a body, but a trail. Small personal items. Dropped deliberately. Almost carefully. Like breadcrumbs. Leading deep into the forest. The final discovery came 43 days later. The remains were found miles away from the car. No signs of restraint. No defensive wounds. The medical examiner's conclusion was disturbing. Cause of death, exposure. Time of death, within hours of disappearance. Meaning one thing was certain. Someone had been there, watching, and chose not to help. The coworker was arrested. Not for murder, but for failure to report. For obstruction. For withholding critical information. In court, he never cried. Never raised his voice. He only said one thing before sentencing. I didn't push him, I just didn't stop him. The case sparked a national debate. Is silence a crime? Is knowing enough? At what point does inaction become responsibility? To this day, people still argue about whether justice was truly served. Because the most frightening part of this story isn't how it ended. It's how easily it could happen again. No weapons. No chase. No screams. Just a conversation. And a decision made in the dark. So tonight, as you listen to this story, ask yourself one question. If someone you knew was standing at the edge, would you speak up? Or would you stay silent and let the night decide?